Hey guys, I'm at Raleigh's North America headquarters checking out some of their electric bikes, and these ones, this is the Sprite IE, one of the more approachable platforms, especially this step-thru. Comes in 4 different sizes. I think it's like 13, 15, 17, and 19, and we're looking at, one of the smalls here. Again, just real easy to approach this thing, swing your foot over. Not a lot of reach happening here. You've got an adjustable angle stem, swept back handlebars. This is a great platform for someone who wants a bike that's fun to ride around, but maybe not so intimidating. And then, if you're maybe a little bit more confident and a tad bit larger, you can get this high step frame, classic kind of a men's frame, but it's gonna give you a little bit more stiffness, in addition to that more masculine, like top tube look. But you'll notice they sloped it down a little bit. You still have the adjustable angle stem, swept back bars. I like the ergonomic grips we're working with here. Several of the features on this bike have been toned down a little bit just to hit the more a reasonable price point. It's $18.99, so we're just below that $2,000 price, but you still get a great warranty, a couple years, and they tend to be sold through dealers. And that's really a neat feature that I appreciate about Raleigh. It's a company that's been around for a long time. They got a great reputation, and their e-bikes are a little bit more complex than, say, just a standard, pedal power bicycle. And one of the areas that you can actually adjust is top speed on this. So they use something called a CAN bus system. There's this communication happening in addition to just sending electricity. It's a little bit smarter. We're looking at a kind of a simplified display interface, but you can do a lot with this. And one of the things I really like about it is that there's a mini USB port right there. So that's great if you're someone who has a phone or a GPS or even like some speakers or maybe even like some lights, some fun lights for the holidays. You can plug those in, you can run off the battery. This is a 48 volt, 8.8 amp hour with lithium ion cells. Pretty solid. Now you are sacrificing a little bit of stability by having the battery mounted high and towards the rear like this. It's a trade-off that a lot of these step-thru bikes have to make, because otherwise you end up with a really expensive frame and it's custom, and not only are you supporting all the way to the front part of the bike and the steering, but now you have a battery there too, or you bolt the battery on top and then you can kick it easier. It gets in the way. Well, I do love that while they move the battery towards the rear, you get bottle cage bosses here. So you can add a little cage, you can add a kind of a folding lock or a mini pump, any kind of accessory. I was really surprised I didn't see those on the high step. And maybe we'll see them when this hits the market or something, but they could have been like right here, or maybe even right here, and I just wasn't sure. I mean, there are accessories, you can add them behind the saddle. This is a great rack, uses standard gauge tubing, so you could add a trunk bag, or you could add a pannier on the side. There's a little clip here, so you could have bungee cords as well. Some people even add like a little cup holder adapter up here, but the bars aren't especially wide. You have limited areas to clamp onto them. I like this. It's a little bit narrower. You're going to be able to get through doors easier. But that's just one area I didn't quite understand. I don't know what's going on. These are purpose-built electric bikes. You can see that the cables are pretty clean, and they're routed internally through the frame to stay out of the way. They do protrude a little bit at the bottom bracket, so try not to hit a curb or other sharp object there. This is using the Trans-X M16 GTA mid-drive. Pretty impressive system. They use this on some of their higher-end, faster speed pedelec bikes. The top speed on this one, by default, is 20 miles per hour. The motor's going to put out 63 newton meters of torque. It's rated 300 to 500 watts. Again, nice, brings some of that weight forward. A lot of the older electric bikes had a hub motor and a rear rack battery. Now at least you bring some of that motor power and weight forward, and you're able to leverage the power with this 7-speed Shimano Altus drivetrain. Okay, so, Altus is a couple steps up. It's not Tourney TX, and that's gonna maybe hold up a little bit better, require fewer adjustments from your shop. I also love that they've got a chain cover here to protect your pants and to keep this chain on track. There's actually like a guide, so there's a sandwich of metal, and that's especially useful for when you're going over bumpy terrain and maybe you've upgraded to their boost button option. So this is where the shop comes in. I think it's about $50. You can buy this They mount it right here or maybe over here, and then they plug it into this extra wire. So you can see there's like a 6. There are 2 modes, like full power right here, you have to hold it, or 6 miles per hour, which is more like a medium speed walk mode. And you know, it works all right. There's a little bit of finger and hand fatigue if you're actively like reaching all the way over and pushing this button while riding. You know, I might mount it in front of the trigger shifters if I was using it a lot. Again, this is optional. By default, this is a class 1, just basic pedal assist. And you can see that, class 1, 350 watt, 20 mile per hour. You know, we're here in California right now, and they did some legislation that says, okay, you know, we want to specify what type of electric bike the person is riding and create different areas that accept different types of bikes, because there are high speed, like commuter ones. There's the iZip E3 Dash, for example, that goes 28 miles per hour, whereas this is 20 mile per hour, a little bit more mellow. And it's nice to see that. Like, this is a pretty big professional company trying to do things right. So coming back to the bike itself, I love that there are 2 frames. Aluminum alloy is relatively lightweight. It's aluminum fork. You might end up with a little bit more vibration, especially if you're riding at those higher speeds, but for relatively low speeds, it works out okay. The tires are 1.95 thickness, so it's a little bit more cushion, more air than if they were the narrow road tires. 26 inches versus 28, so it's a little bit a smaller diameter, brings the whole bike down closer to the ground. I've got the standover height measured back at the website for you. I know that's something people care about, and you know, you really want to get the fit right. Another important aspect of any bike, but especially electric bikes, is braking, and we've got mechanical linear pull brakes. You can see right up here. These are a little bit more basic. Tektro, mechanical versus hydraulic. It's an area where they're saving some money. They worked okay in my experience, and especially if you're not riding in really wet or muddy conditions. You know, the rims can sometimes get wet and you can end up scraping them a little bit and stuff. These have worked great for dozens of years, but now we're seeing more disc brakes, and of course that ups the price. So it's one area that I would look at if you're someone who's really trying to step this up in terms of performance. But then again, you've got this mid-drive motor, and I guess it might be overkill in some cases. I do really like that they upgraded the pedals. These are big plastic platform with rubber tread and these plastic pins. See how big that is? It's going to give it a little bit more traction if it is wet. And for someone who has maybe larger feet or who isn't as stable and balanced on an electric bike, it's important to have good touch points like that. Again, coming up to the ergonomic grips and the adjustable stem. It's like you want your points of contact to be good. Velo saddle, a little bit more of a comfort saddle, wide, and it has a handle underneath, so you can grab that and lift the bike. One area that I talk about frequently with electric bikes is the seat post diameter. So if we take this off and look at it, you know, it's about 350 millimeters long, and then it uses kind of a unique size. I think it's like 29.8 or something. And you know, you can replace these with seat post suspension sometimes, and it's one of the ways that you can improve the comfort of the bike. But one of the drawbacks is that, see how low this saddle goes right now? Well, if you had a seat post suspension, it would have to be like at least that high. So if you're someone who's a little bit shorter, that's kind of a bummer. You know, there's a trade-off. And you might be able to replace this saddle with one that has springs or bumpers and things. I do love that they've mounted the kickstand really far back. You'll notice that the pedals can spin all the way around without colliding there, and that the charging port on the battery isn't down here where it's going to get bumped or something. It's right up here on the battery pack itself. Got a little handle. It's easy to carry this thing around. It's magnetic, so when you fold it up, it stays. It's not going to be bouncing around. I really appreciate stuff like that. It's just the little things. You know, there are times where you might be storing this in your garage or in a really hot or cold place, and you might want to take the battery off and charge that separately, or just store it. If you're going to store the battery for a long time, I recommend keeping it at like half charge, 50%, so it's not stressed at either extreme, like full or really empty. Check on it every few months, and then, you know, before you ride, fill it all the way up. This uses a more generic kind of a basic charger here, about 1.8 pounds in terms of weight. Nice metal cup at the end, so it's going to be durable, and it's 2 amps. So charging it might take, you know, 4.5, 5 hours. The first half of the charge goes a lot faster because the battery doesn't have to balance the cells and stuff. It's just a little bit more like fill her up, fills right up. So yeah, coming back and looking at the high step, you can see that the frame's just a little bit longer. it's definitely more stiff. I was doing the handlebar test where you kind of shake the bike like this, and you notice like a little bit of wobble towards the end. There's a little bit of frame flex. There's more on the step-thru. So if we do that, yeah, it just kind of bounces around. Again, not a huge deal, especially if you're riding around in a neighborhood environment on, you know, paved streets. It's just something I think about, something that comes up as a fan of mountain biking and other sports. It's like, what does that step-thru frame mean? How does that impact your ride quality? Well, the quality is pretty good, especially if you're sitting down and especially if you're riding at those relatively low speeds. I think that's a pretty good overview. I do love that they've got some extra bosses here, so you could potentially add a fender. The rear rack acts almost like a fender. It's going to keep you pretty dry. You can see that the cables are wired, so I think it's pre-wired for lights if you wanted to add those, as well as that kind of the button throttle that I was mentioning earlier, and then that CAN bus system. So if there are any software updates over time, you take it to your shop and they can update it for you. They can get this thing to the latest and greatest, or if you damage a part, like if this gets bumped or something and you have to replace it, it's modular. They can just disconnect it, add a new one, program it in, and you should be ready to go. That's a pretty neat feature for a bike that's like sub $2,000. It's not just, you know, electricity, motor, throttle. Like there's more going on here. It's a little bit more refined. And the display panel, I guess that's where I should go next. I should just jump into that. Weight of the bike's about 54.5 pounds. The battery, 7.4 pounds. A little bit heavier given, you know, the capacity. Maybe they're using lower energy dense cells to kind of save on the price. I think it's fine. And there were no ratings on this rack, unfortunately. A lot of times it's like 40 to 55 pounds, but then you're taking 7.4 pounds out of that because of the battery pack itself. So just keep an eye on it. You know, you've got nice sturdy support arms here, but it's just one area that, you know, there's already weight on it. So I think you have to press the power button on this side of the battery pack. You can see my fingers are a little bit green there. You don't have to leave the key in, but I'm going to, just to keep this thing from getting lost. And then we come up here to the display panel and press the power button, and it blinks to life. So we've got our battery capacity up at the top, green, yellow, and red. So it's sort of like full, getting empty, very empty. It's not nearly as precise as an LCD display, but again, it's cost savings measure. It stays a little bit more out of the way. It's a little bit simpler. I would estimate, you know, 20 to 40 miles range, depending on your weight, the terrain, the wind. There are a lot of factors. So anyway, coming back down here, we can press minus, and now we're in like bicycle mode. There's no assist. It's just gonna ride like a regular bike, a heavy regular bike. And then we press plus and we get one level of assist, plus again, plus, 4 levels. So 4 levels of assist for full power, and that's pretty cool. And then up here, you see that 0? That's the speed. So right now we're going 0 miles per hour. But if I want, I can press the power button and this changes from speed to range. So let's see how far it thinks we can go at our highest power level. 23 miles. So yeah, not bad. Let's take it all the way down to 73 miles. Well, that's a pretty ambitious, you know, depending on the speed you're riding and how much energy you're putting in, that I guess it's possible. Again, I only weigh 135 pounds. I'm pretty athletic, so maybe it could get that far with me. This uses a cadence sensor inside the TransX drive system, okay? So it's not quite as sophisticated as Bosch or Broza or Shimano. They measure like wheel speed, pedal cadence, and pedal torque. This one just measures like, are you pedaling? Is there movement? And if there is, great. The motor hops in, and it's just up to as much power as you asked for. A little bit of power, a lot of power. And that's all well and good, and I kind of like it because my knees don't get as sensitive. I don't strain my legs as much with the cadence sensor, but it's a little slower to react, and that's starting and stopping. So when I'm starting, I have to like lumber for a second and get the crank arm turning, and then it kicks in. And then when I stop pedaling, it coasts for a minute and it's and then it pauses out. Now the downside of that with this new brake setup is that there are no motor inhibitors. So you could potentially be braking hard trying to stop while the motor is still kind of... There's only a half a second worth of time. It's just not quite as... I guess it's just not as refined. That might have been another cost-cutting measure. I think they used to put motor inhibitors always because there was like a throttle, and they didn't want you to accidentally be twisting the throttle and braking and have an issue. But with pedaling, I guess they figure, look, most people are going to stop pedaling if they're braking. So that's fine. I just want to highlight that so you can be a little bit extra careful. The other area is, if you're pedaling at all and pedal assist is going, well, it's going to put those 63 Newton meters, which is kind of a lot, worth of power into the chain, into the sprockets, and into the derailleur, and that can cause wear over time. So I guess I would just say shift thoughtfully, maybe even arrow down a little bit on assist when you shift. Don't be climbing when you shift. I'm gonna go through this when I do a ride test. I just wanna be clear that, you know, the system isn't quite as smart. You're getting a really capable motor, but you're not giving it as many inputs, just the levels of assist. There's also a walk mode. So I think if I hold the plus button for a few seconds, see that green light? Now if I hold minus, there we go. See, it was just starting there. There we go. It's not really fast. It's just a little bit of a boost, so you don't have to push this bike around all on your own. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna kick that kickstand up, stow it. I'm gonna hop on. Oh, and with that little throttle button, you would have to press this power button for a couple seconds. You press it, and then that green light would come back on, and that means, hey, we're in throttle mode, and that's when you could use these other two buttons. Sorry I don't have it installed for you today. Okay, we're in the highest level of assist. I'm just gonna start. Pretty responsive. You know, it was like, I was pedaling, it was like, rant. Like, you know, I was trying to trick it and see how quickly it would start and stop. But again, this time I'm gonna brake while I'm pedaling. See, I'm braking, and the motor doesn't care. It's just kind of doing its own thing. So that's what I mean. It's not quite as refined as some of the others. Okay, this time I'm gonna switch through some gears so you can listen to how that sounds. Little bit of clunking going on, and that's what I was saying. I'm not standing up, I'm not putting all my weight into pedaling, I'm just pedaling, but the motor, because it's so powerful, it's like kunk, kunk. It's really stressing it a little bit. So I would just say be thoughtful when you shift gears up here. And then again, this shifter design, I'm a bit more of a fan of those trigger shifters underneath, but this is really clear, it's intuitive if you're someone who's maybe not, you know, this super athlete cyclist. I also like that if you're wearing gloves, the buttons are really easy to work with. They aren't tiny, they're nice and big. Pretty stable here, riding this around. Nice upright body position too. Pretty comfortable, so I can spot traffic and stuff. I think lights are one of the areas that I would upgrade myself. I'd either add some aftermarket lights or get my shop to wire some in. The advantage of wiring lights in is that they're gonna run right off that main battery pack. You don't have to worry about taking them off every time you stop, or charging them after you get off your bike, turning them off, you know, things like that. It's nice to have them wired in, but again, they don't come with it because I think they're trying to hit that lower price point. Okay guys, I got the step-thru here. I was gonna show you the frame flex thing just a little bit. Camera's mounted way back by the battery, so you can see the whole length of the frame. I'm gonna shake it, and then I'm gonna ride standing up, just to give you an idea. Again, I don't think this is a huge deal. It's just one of the things you sacrifice. So if you're a guy who's a little bit bigger, you might prefer the step-thru, but you might get a little bit of that feeling like, oh, it's not quite as rigid. Brakes do a good job if you get a grip on them. Yeah, you know, it's actually fairly stiff considering it's a wave, like single tube. going on here, like top tube, down tube combination. I have to say I'm fairly impressed. You know, sometimes they're really flexy, but I just think this bike isn't as heavy as some of the other big, huge cruisers I've tried. Okay, now you can watch the motor up close and see how quickly it responds in pedal assist, and listen when I shift through some of those gears. Again, I'm not trying to overdo it, I'm just shifting when I'm pedaling like normal, but I am gonna be in the 3rd level of assist. I'm not gonna go up to 4 this time. Well, that was kind of cool. That time I hit the 20-mile-per-hour top speed, so the motor just kind of, it just quit. It was like, we're there, legal cutoff. I guess that's it. That's the Raleigh Sprite IE. Super excited that I got to see both of these, because sometimes I only get to see one frame, and I really think that that step-thru is going to be a good fit for some people. For the full write-up on this, including some more details, comments, you can leave your own feedback. I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there, ride safe.